My name is Harper, and I'm 28 years old. The fluorescent lights in that Chicago hospital hallway buzzed like a swarm of angry hornets, drilling into my skull as I watched the nurses hustle my mom, Evelyn, onto a gurney. Her face was pale, twisted in pain from the fall that cracked her hip like a brittle twig. The wheels squeaked against the linoleum, and the IV drip clicked rhythmically, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I was alone, utterly, gut-wrenchingly alone. No dad rushing in with his usual gruff concern. No brother Landon dropping everything to be the hero. Not even Mia, my ride-or-die from elementary school days. They were all at Landon's fancy wedding rehearsal dinner downtown, toasting with champagne while I gripped the cold metal railing, praying Mom would make it through surgery. The doors to the OR swung shut with a whoosh, sealing her away. And that's when the panic hit me like a freight train. What if this was it? What if I lost her right here, in this sterile hellhole, without a single soul to hold my hand? I leaned against the wall, the chill seeping through my thin sweater, and flashed back to when I was 8, scraping my knee on the sidewalk outside our Oak Park home. Mom had scooped me up, her arms strong and warm, whispering, "It's okay, sweetie, I've got you," as she bandaged it with those colorful cartoon strips. She was my rock back then, the one who made everything better with a hug and a homemade cookie. Now, roles reversed, I was the one supposed to have her back, and failing miserably because the rest of the family couldn't be bothered. My phone vibrated in my pocket like it was alive, jolting me back. I pulled it out, hands shaking, and saw the text from Dad. "We need to talk ASAP." Below that, 17 missed calls. His, Landon's, even Mia's. What the hell could be so urgent now after ignoring my pleas all day? The screen blurred through my tears, and the beeps from nearby machines seemed to mock me, faster, louder, echoing my rising dread. Why weren't they here? How could a damn rehearsal trump this? If this hits home, tap like and subscribe. There's more you won't see coming. And before we get back to the story, would you be kind enough to give this video a like? You know, every single like means a lot to me. It's the kind of encouragement that keeps me creating and bringing you even better stories tomorrow. The waiting room was a blur of beige walls and outdated magazines, the kind where time stretches like taffy. I paced, my sneakers squeaking on the floor, replaying the morning in my head. Mom had been in the kitchen, trying to make tea, her hands fumbling with the kettle like it was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I'd turned my back for 2 seconds to grab her meds, and then the crash, her cry piercing the air. "Harper? Help!" By the time the paramedics arrived, her confusion had kicked in full force, the Alzheimer's turning her eyes wild and unrecognizing. "Who are you?" she'd mumbled as they loaded her up, and it stabbed deeper than any knife. I texted the family group again. "Mom's going into surgery now. Please, someone come." No response. Just those earlier excuses. Dad buried in work emails, Landon stressing over seating charts for his big day with Brooke, Mia tied up with bridesmaid duties. The air smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee from the vending machine, clinging to my skin. My mind raced. What if complications arose? The doc had warned about risks with her condition. Confusion post-anesthesia could turn ugly. I sank into a plastic chair, knees bouncing, whispering to myself, "Hold on, Mom, just hold on." Hours ticked by. Or was it minutes? Time lost meaning under those lights. A nurse finally poked her head in, her scrubs rumpled. "Ms. Harper? Your mom's stable for now, but..." She hesitated, and my stomach dropped. "There's a complication. The surgeon needs to..." The door swung open again, cutting her off, and my heart leaped, hoping against hope it was family. But it was just another patient being wheeled past. The tension coiled tighter, like a spring about to snap. What happened next would shatter everything I thought I knew about loyalty. The hospital hallway's buzz lingered in my head like a bad song on repeat, but it was Mom's shaky voice from years ago that drowned it out. I was 6, wobbling on a bike with no training wheels, the summer air thick with the scent of cut grass in our Oak Park neighborhood. "Keep pedaling, Harper," she'd called, jogging beside me, her hands steadying the seat until I found my balance. Her laugh was warm, like sunlight breaking through clouds, and when I finally rode solo down the block, she clapped like I'd won the Olympics. "That's my girl," she'd said, scooping me into a hug that smelled of lavender soap and flour from the kitchen. Those were the days when Mom was my whole world, the one who made everything feel safe, no matter how wobbly life got. Back then, our little house on Elm Street was a haven. Mom, a school nurse, would come home with stories of kids she'd patched up, her hands quick with Band-Aids and her smile quicker to ease their tears. Weekends were for baking, apple pies or gooey chocolate chip cookies, the kitchen a mess of flour-dusted counters and her humming oldies. I'd perch on a stool, licking batter off a spoon, while she taught me to measure sugar by feel. "Cooking's like love," she'd say, winking. "You gotta trust your gut." Those moments stitched us together, a bond tighter than the seams on her old apron. But even then, the cracks were there, just below the surface. Dad, always hunched over his accounting ledgers in the den, had a soft spot for my brother Landon that I could never quite touch. Landon was the golden boy, tall, charming, the kid who'd score touchdowns at Pee Wee football while Dad cheered like it was the Super Bowl. I'd be in the bleachers, clutching a book, watching Dad's face light up for Landon in a way it never did for me. My straight-A report cards, a pat on the head and a "good job, kid," Landon's C- in math, a new bike to motivate him. Mom tried to balance it out, slipping me extra cookies or taking me to the library for our time, but the favoritism was like a splinter under my skin, small but always there. By the time I hit high school, it was clear who the star was. Landon got the car for his 16th birthday. I got a bus pass. Dad showed up to every one of his games, but missed my debate finals because work ran late. Mom was there, though, front row, clapping louder than anyone when I won. She pinned my award to the fridge, right next to her faded recipe cards. "You're gonna do big things, Harper," she'd say, her eyes shining with a pride that made my chest ache. I held on to that, even as Dad's attention stayed glued to Landon's every move. Mia saw it all. My best friend since 3rd grade, she'd sprawl on my bedroom floor during sleepovers, braiding her hair and rolling her eyes at Landon's latest stunt. "Your dad's got a blind spot the size of Lake Michigan," she'd say, tossing popcorn at me. We'd laugh over how Landon could charm his way out of anything. Groundings, bad grades, even the time he dented Dad's car. Mia was my confidant, the one who'd sneak me into her mom's car for late-night ice cream runs when Dad's favoritism stung too hard. "You're the real deal, Harper," she'd say. "They'll see it one day." Fast forward to my 20s, I landed a job as a loan officer at a local bank, crunching numbers and helping families buy their first homes. It wasn't flashy, but it felt like planting seeds for something solid. Mom was over the moon, clipping my business card to the fridge like it was a museum piece. "My daughter, the banker," she'd brag to neighbors, her voice carrying that same warmth from our baking days. But Dad? He was too busy hyping Landon's new tech sales gig in the city, where he was already schmoozing clients over martinis. "Landon's killing it," Dad would say, while my promotions got a nod and a "that's nice." Our neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, a retired teacher with a garden full of roses, started noticing me more as I grew up. She'd wave me over while watering her plants, handing me a lemonade and asking about my job. "You're a good egg, Harper," she'd say, her eyes crinkling. Once, when I was hauling groceries for Mom, she slipped me a 20. "For all you do," she said, patting my arm. It was small, but it felt like someone saw me, really saw me, when my own family didn't. Now, sitting in that hospital waiting room, the weight of those years pressed down like a stone. The mom who'd cheered my bike rides was fighting for her life, and the family I'd grown up with was nowhere to be found. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old photos. Me and Mom at my college graduation, her in a goofy hat, grinning wide. Then a new notification popped up. Landon's Instagram, a shot of him and his fiancée Brooke clinking glasses at their rehearsal dinner. The caption read, "Best night ever." My stomach twisted. Best night ever, while I was here, drowning in antiseptic fumes and fear. The nurse's voice snapped me back. "Ms. Harper," she said, her clipboard clutched tight. "We need to talk about your mom's condition." Her tone was heavy, like she was bracing for bad news. My heart sank and the room seemed to tilt. What was happening in that operating room? The nurse's words hung in the air like a storm cloud. But as I braced for whatever bomb she was about to drop, my mind yanked me back. Not to the present chaos, but to the quiet unraveling that started it all 5 years ago. Back when Mom's slip-ups were just quirky little blips, the kind you laugh off over coffee. It began with the keys. I'd come home from the bank one evening, arms full of takeout bags from Giordano's, our Friday ritual of deep dish pizza and bad TV reruns, and find her rummaging through the kitchen drawers like a detective on a cold case. "Harper, have you seen my car keys?" she'd ask, her brow furrowed under the pendant light. I'd spot them right there on the hook by the door, where they always were. "Mom, they're hanging up," I'd say, chuckling. She'd blink, then laugh it off. "Silly me, must be getting old." But it happened again the next week, and the week after that. The scent of burnt toast lingered in the air one morning, because she'd forgotten the toaster altogether, staring at it like it was a stranger. Then came the names. We were at the grocery store, the fluorescent aisles buzzing with carts and chatter, when she turned to me with a smile and said, "Landon, grab the milk, would you?" My stomach twisted. "Mom, it's me, Harper." Her face flushed, eyes darting away as she grabbed a carton of eggs instead. "Of course, sweetie, just a mix-up." But inside, a whisper started nagging at me. This isn't right. Is it stress? Or something worse? I pushed it down, telling myself it was nothing. Everyone forgets stuff sometimes. But the doubts crept in during quiet moments, like when I'd catch her staring out the window, her coffee going cold in her hands, as if she was lost in a fog I couldn't see through. I couldn't ignore it forever. One afternoon, after she called me by our old dog's name, Buddy, who died when I was 10, I booked the appointment. The doctor's office was a sterile box in a suburban clinic, walls plastered with posters about healthy aging. Mom fidgeted in the chair beside me, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse, the leather worn from years of use. Dr. Ramirez, a kind-faced guy with a clipboard and a gentle voice, ran through the tests, memory quizzes, brain scans, the works. I sat there, my leg bouncing under the table, inner voice screaming, "Please let it be nothing. Let it be vitamins or sleep or anything fixable." Mom aced the easy stuff but stumbled on recalling words, drawing a clock face all skewed like a kid's doodle. The air felt thick, the tick of the wall clock mocking us. When he delivered the news, it landed like a sucker punch. "Early onset Alzheimer's," he said, his tone steady but sorry. "It's progressive. We'll start meds to slow it down, but—" He trailed off, handing us pamphlets that felt like lead weights. Mom nodded blankly, but I saw the fear flicker in her eyes. The same eyes that had sparkled when teaching me to bake. My mind raced. How do we fight this? Who's we? Am I ready for this? The drive home was silent, rain pattering on the windshield like tears, and I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Do I quit my job? Move in? What about my life? The bank promotions? The apartment I'd just leased? The weight settled on my chest, heavy as a stone, whispering, "You're not equipped for this." But who else would step up? That night, I called a family meeting. We gathered around the oak dining table where we'd shared countless meals, the surface scarred from years of homework and holidays. Dad sat at the head, his tie loosened after a long day crunching numbers, while Landon lounged opposite, scrolling his phone. Mia wasn't there. She'd texted, "Busy with work, but thinking of you." But I wish she was, for backup. I laid it out. The diagnosis. The doctor's warnings about round-the-clock care eventually. "We need a plan," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "Shifts. Maybe hire help down the line." Inside, I was pleading. "Share this load. Don't leave me hanging." Dad leaned back, rubbing his chin. "That's tough, kiddo. But we'll rally. I'll look into some facilities if it gets bad." Relief washed over me like a cool wave. False hope, as it turned out. Landon nodded vaguely. "Yeah, sucks. I've got that big client pitch next week, but count me in after." We ended with hugs and promises, and for a moment, I believed it. Family sticks together, right? But the promises evaporated faster than morning dew. Dad forgot to research those facilities, buried in quarterly reports. Landon vanished into his sales world, texting excuses like, "Swamped, sis. Rain check on visiting mom." Mia called once, sympathetic but distant. "Let me know if you need anything." I was left holding the bag. 2 weeks later, I gave notice at the bank for part-time hours, packed my bags, and moved back into my old room. The one with faded posters and childhood ghosts. The house smelled the same, like Mom's lavender and faint dust. But everything felt off-kilter. My days blurred into a routine, mornings prepping her meds in colorful organizers, afternoons walking her around the block to keep her oriented, evenings coaxing her to eat while she stared at the TV, not really seeing it. The doubt gnawed at me during quiet hours. What if I mess this up? What if she wanders off because I'm at work? But I pushed through. For her. The woman who'd bandaged my knees now needed me to tie her shoes. And as the months ticked by, the family's indifference hardened into a wall I couldn't breach. Back in the hospital, the nurse's update pulled me from the memory. "Your mom's out of surgery," she said, but her eyes hinted at more trouble ahead. My phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Dad. What now? The nurse's words, "Your mom's out of surgery," hung like a lifeline, but her hesitant glance told me the fight was far from over. I nodded, gripping my phone with Dad's missed call glaring on the screen, and sank back into the hospital waiting room's plastic chair. The antiseptic smell clung to my sweater, pulling me back to those early months after Mom's Alzheimer's diagnosis, when life became a treadmill I couldn't step off. Back then, I thought I could handle it, juggle caregiving, work, the whole 9 yards. But as the days bled into months, the weight of it all started crushing me, and the family I'd hoped would step up faded like a bad signal. My mornings started at 5 a.m., the Oak Park house creaking as I tiptoed to the kitchen to prep Mom's breakfast. Oatmeal with a sprinkle of cinnamon, just how she liked it before her mind started slipping. I'd set out her pills in a rainbow organizer, blue for memory, white for blood pressure, double-checking the labels with bleary eyes. Safety was my obsession. I'd installed locks on cabinets after she tried microwaving a metal spoon, and I taped a checklist to the fridge. Stove off, doors locked, no sharp objects. The routine was my anchor, but it tethered me to a life I barely recognized. On good days, Mom would hum an old Beatles tune, her eyes sparking with a glimpse of the woman who'd taught me to bake pies. "Harper, you're my angel," she'd say, squeezing my hand, her fingers frail but warm. Those moments kept me going, like sips of water in a desert. The bad days, though, they were a gut punch. One evening, I found her in the living room, clutching a photo of Dad from their wedding, sobbing, "Where's my husband? Why won't he come home?" He was at the office, like always, but to her, he was a ghost. I'd kneel beside her, heart splintering, and lie, "He'll be here soon, Mom." She'd nod, lost in her fog, while I fought the urge to scream. Another time, she wandered into the backyard at midnight, barefoot in her nightgown, muttering about a dog we hadn't owned in years. I coaxed her back inside, the grass damp under my sneakers, my voice steady despite the panic clawing my chest. What if I'd been asleep? What if she'd gotten out the gate? Sleep became a stranger. I'd lie awake in my old bedroom, the glow of streetlights seeping through the blinds, listening for her footsteps. My alarm clock mocked me with its red digits, 3:17 a.m., 4:02 a.m. Coffee was my lifeline, the bitter taste grounding me as I dragged through shifts at the bank. My savings account bled dry, eaten up by medical bills and a part-time home health aide when I couldn't be there. I'd crunch numbers at night, the calculator's clicks blending with the hum of Mom's oxygen machine, wondering how long I could keep this up before I broke. I reached out to the family, desperate for a lifeline. "We need to talk about Mom." I texted the group chat, my fingers trembling. Dad replied, "Rough time at work, Harper. Let's touch base soon." Landon, "Sis, I'm slammed with deals. You got this." Mia, who'd always been my rock, sent a heart emoji and a vague, "Here if you need me." But "here" meant nothing when I was drowning. I tried one last time, calling Dad direct. "She's getting worse," I said, voice cracking. "I can't do this alone." He sighed, the sound heavy through the phone. "We'll figure something out after Landon's wedding. It's a big deal, you know." Click. The line went dead, and so did a piece of my hope. Enter Carla, the home health aide who became my unexpected ally. A no-nonsense woman in her 50s, she'd show up with her braided hair and a thermos of tea, sharing stories of her own mom's dementia while adjusting Mom's pillows. "It's a marathon, not a sprint," she'd say, her voice calm but firm. One day, as we sat over lukewarm coffee in the kitchen, she looked me in the eye. "Harper, you're carrying the world on your shoulders. Don't let it crush you." Her words hit like a wake-up call, echoing Mom's old advice. Don't carry it alone. But where was my backup? Carla was a godsend, but she was paid help, not family. The isolation sank deeper, like ink spreading through water. The tipping point came one rainy afternoon. I'd just gotten Mom settled with a puzzle when my phone pinged, a notification from Landon's Instagram. A photo of him and Brooke at a cake tasting, all smiles and frosting. Caption, "Wedding vibes." Meanwhile, I was scrubbing oatmeal off the floor because Mom had spilled her bowl, thinking it was paint. The contrast burned. I texted Mia, "Can you swing by? I'm losing it." Her reply, "Got a bridesmaid fitting, but I'll call later." Later never came. Dad sent a check for $200, pocket change compared to the bills piling up, and a note, "For Mom's stuff." For Mom's... No visit, no call. Landon? Radio silence, probably picking out tuxes. The exhaustion wasn't just physical. It was a bone-deep loneliness. I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror, dark circles under my eyes, hair a mess, clothes hanging loose, and wonder who I'd become. Was this my life now? The girl who'd dreamed of climbing the bank's corporate ladder, now a ghost in her own story? Carla caught me staring at Mom's old recipe cards one night, tears dripping onto the faded ink. "You're stronger than you know," she said, handing me a tissue. But I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was holding up a house that was crumbling anyway. Then the phone rang, shattering the quiet. It was the hospital. A nurse's voice clipped and urgent. "Ms. Harper, your mom's had a fall. You need to come now." My heart stopped, the world tilting as I grabbed my keys. What had gone wrong? The hospital's call came like a thunderclap, ripping me from the haze of exhaustion that had become my life. My keys jangled in my hand as I raced out the door, the image of Mom's oatmeal-smeared bowl still burning in my mind from that afternoon's cleanup. The drive to the ER was a blur of red lights and rain-slicked streets, the wipers thumping in time with my racing heart. All I could see was Mom, her frail frame crumpled on the kitchen floor, her voice faint and confused. How had I let this happen? I'd been so careful, locking cabinets, checking stoves, but one moment of distraction, grabbing her meds from the counter, and she'd slipped through the cracks of my vigilance. I burst into the ER at Northwestern Memorial, the antiseptic stench hitting me like a wall. Nurses bustled past, their sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, and I spotted Mom on a gurney, her face pale under the fluorescent glare. "Harper?" she mumbled, her eyes darting, not quite landing on me. I grabbed her hand, cold and trembling, and choked back a sob. "I'm here, Mom. Right here." The doctor, a wiry guy with a clipboard and a grim expression, pulled me aside. "Fractured hip," he said, voice clipped. "She fell hard. Surgery's needed, but with her Alzheimer's, it's risky. Confusion post-op could be severe, and recovery's no picnic." I nodded, my throat tight, as he rattled off terms like anesthesia complications and rehab challenges. My mind screamed, she's slipping away, and I'm not enough to hold her here. I sank into a chair by her bed, the monitors beeping like a countdown. My phone felt like a brick in my pocket, but I pulled it out and fired off a group text to Dad, Landon, and Mia. "Mom fell, in ER, needs surgery, please come." My hands shook as I hit send, clinging to a flicker of hope they'd show up. This was different, bigger than forgotten keys or mixed-up names. Surely they'd drop everything, right? Dad's reply came first, a buzz that made my heart leap, then sink. "That's awful, Harper. But Landon's rehearsal dinner is tonight. Big night for the family. We'll check in after." Landon's text followed. "Sis, timing's brutal. Brooks' folks are in town. Can't bail now. Keep us posted." Mia's was a knife. "Oh no, so sorry. Helping with the wedding setup. We'll call soon." I stared at the screen, the words blurring through hot tears. Rehearsal dinner? Wedding setup? My mom was fighting for her life, and they were picking out centerpieces? I called Dad, desperation clawing at me. The phone rang twice before he picked up, his voice muffled by clinking glasses and laughter in the background. "Harper, what's the update?" he asked, like I was reporting on a flat tire. "She's going into surgery, Dad. It's serious. I need you here." A pause, then a sigh. "Look, kid, this is Landon's moment. We'll swing by tomorrow, okay? You're tough. You've got this." The line went dead, and I wanted to hurl the phone across the room. Tough? I was drowning, and he was tossing me an anchor. Mia was next. I dialed, gripping the armrest, the plastic creaking under my fingers. "Harper, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice rushed, a rustle of fabric in the background like she was folding napkins. "I'm at the venue, setting up for Brooks' thing. I'll come by after, I swear." I snapped, my voice sharper than I meant. "After? Mia, she might not make it through surgery?" Silence, then a week. "I'll try, okay? I promised Brooke I'd help." Click. Another door slammed shut. The hospital clock ticked past midnight, each second stretching like molasses. I paced the waiting room, the coffee machine's hum mocking my frayed nerves. Memories flooded in. Mom teaching me to tie my shoes, her fingers patient and sure, a stark contrast to the trembling hands I'd held hours ago. I wasn't ready to lose her. Not like this. Not alone. The surgeon emerged, scrubs wrinkled, his face unreadable. "She's stable, but we hit a snag in surgery. Some bleeding we didn't expect." My heart plummeted. "She's not out of the woods yet," he added, and turned back to the OR. I sank to the floor, back against the wall, the cold seeping through my jeans. My phone lit up again. Another text from Dad. "How's it going?" "How's it going?" Like this was a casual check-in. I didn't reply. The emptiness of the waiting room mirrored the hollow ache inside me. Where were they when I needed them most? The hospital floor was cold against my back. The surgeon's words, "Not out of the woods yet," looping in my head like a broken record. I clutched my phone, Dad's flippant, "How's it going?" text glowing on the screen, mocking me as the monitors beeped in the distance. My world was shrinking to this sterile box of a waiting room, while across town, my family was living it up at Landon's wedding rehearsal like nothing was wrong. The contrast felt like a slap in the face, and the loneliness was a weight I could barely carry anymore. I'd known Landon's wedding to Brooke was a big deal. Dad had been hyping it for months, sinking a small fortune into a downtown Chicago venue with chandeliers that sparkled like they belonged in a movie. The Drake Hotel, all glitz and glamour, with white-gloved waiters and a string quartet Dad bragged about booking. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing," he'd said at dinner weeks ago, his eyes gleaming as he described the custom floral arches and open bar. Landon, ever the charmer, had grinned and toasted to family making memories. I'd forced a smile, my fork stabbing at overcooked chicken, knowing Mom's care was draining my savings while Dad wrote checks for Brooke's designer gown. Now, with Mom fighting post-surgery complications, I tried one last time to pull them back. I texted the group chat, fingers numb. "Mom's got a fever. Docs say it's bad. I need you here." The message sat there, delivered but unread, while I stared at the screen, willing it to light up. Nothing. I called Dad again, the hospital's hum fading as his voicemail kicked in. "This is Tom. Leave a message." I swallowed hard, voice shaking. "Dad, it's me. Mom's worse. Fever, infection, maybe sepsis. Please, just come." I hung up, my breath hitching, and dialed Landon. Straight to voicemail, too, his chipper tone promising to get back to you after the big day. Mia's phone rang once before she texted, "At the rehearsal, super busy. Thinking of you." Thinking of me? What good was that when I was falling apart? Desperate, I scrolled through my contacts, landing on Aunt Linda, Mom's cousin in Milwaukee who'd always been kind at Christmas gatherings. Maybe she'd step up. The line rang, and when she answered, her voice was warm but distant. "Harper, honey, I heard about Evelyn. So sorry." I poured it out. Mom's fall, the surgery, the family's absence. "Can you come? I'm alone here." A pause, then a sigh. "I'd love to, but it's a bad time. I don't want to step on toes with your dad and Landon's wedding plans. Call me later, okay?" The rejection stung worse than I expected, like salt in an open wound. Even the extended family was choosing sides. My phone pinged, and for a split second, I thought it was them. Instead, it was a notification from Instagram, Landon's account. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The screen filled with photos from the rehearsal dinner. Landon and Brooke laughing under fairy lights, Dad raising a glass in a tailored suit, Mia in a sleek dress twirling with some groomsmen. The caption read, "To love and forever." Posted an hour ago, while I sat here with Mom's fever spiking and the nurses rushing in with new IV bags. My chest tightened, a mix of rage and betrayal bubbling up. They were sipping cocktails while I was begging for scraps of support. The hospital felt colder, the air heavy with antiseptic and despair. I paced the waiting room, my sneakers scuffing the floor, replaying the day. Mom had been stable for a moment after surgery, her hand limp in mine. But then the fever hit, her skin hot to the touch, her breathing shallow. The nurse, a young woman with tired eyes, had whispered, "We're doing all we can." But the monitors told a different story, their beeps growing erratic. I'd stood by her bed, whispering, "You're tough, Mom. Hang in there." But my voice cracked, and I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. I tried Dad one more time, my last shred of hope fraying. He picked up, but the background was all clinking glasses and chatter. "Harper, we're wrapping up soon," he said, rushed. "I'll swing by after the toasts. Promise." I wanted to believe him, to cling to that thin thread, but deep down, I knew better. "Dad, she's burning up. This isn't a game." He hesitated. "I know, kid. We'll be there." But his voice lacked conviction, and when the call ended, I felt the thread snap. Hours later, the nurse returned, her face grim. "The fever's not breaking," she said, adjusting her clipboard. "We're running more tests, but it's touch and go." My knees buckled, and I gripped the chair for balance. Touch and go? The words echoed, each one a hammer to my heart. Where was my family when Mom needed them? When I needed them? The nurse's words, touch and go, echoed in my ears as I slumped against the hospital wall, the cold linoleum biting through my jeans. Mom's fever was a wildfire, and I was out of water to douse it. The waiting room clock ticked past 2 a.m., each second a reminder of Dad's empty promise to swing by after the toasts. My phone stayed silent. No texts, no calls, just the ghost of Landon's Instagram post with its fairy lights and champagne toasts. The betrayal stung sharper than the antiseptic air, but I shoved it down, focusing on Mom. She was all that mattered now. A few days later, they wheeled her out of the ICU to a recovery ward, her face still pale but the fever finally breaking. I was there when she woke, her eyes fluttering open, wild with confusion. "Where am I? Who's there?" she rasped, her hands clawing at the hospital blanket. I leaned in, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "It's me, Mom. Harper. You're in the hospital, but you're okay." Her gaze darted around, landing on me for a fleeting moment before clouding over. "Landon? Is that you?" My heart cracked, but I squeezed her hand, whispering, "Just rest, Mom. I've got you." Her breathing slowed, and she drifted back to sleep, but the weight of her words lingered like a bruise. She didn't know me. Not really. Not anymore. Back home, the real grind began. Mom's hip surgery meant she couldn't walk unaided, and her Alzheimer's made everything 10 times harder. I hired Carla, the home health aide, full-time now, dipping into the last of my savings to cover her shifts when I had to work at the bank. The house was a fortress of safety measures, handrails bolted to walls, a hospital bed crammed into the living room, pill bottles lined up like soldiers on the counter. I'd blend her meals into soft mush, coaxing her to eat while she stared blankly at the TV, her fork trembling. On good days, she'd smile faintly, murmuring, "You're good to me, sweetie." And on bad ones, she'd swat the spoon away, yelling for Dad like he was just in the next room. Each time, I'd swallow the hurt and keep going, but it was like running a marathon with no finish line. Money was a noose tightening around my neck. My part-time hours at the bank barely covered groceries, let alone Carla's fees or Mom's meds. I'd sit at the kitchen table at night, calculator in hand, the numbers blurring as my eyes burned from lack of sleep. My savings account was a ghost town. $200 left, then $50, then nothing. I sold my old laptop, my college textbooks, anything to scrape by. Sleep was a distant memory. I'd catch an hour here or there, jolted awake by Mom's cries or the fear she'd wander again. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was a stranger, dark circles carved under my eyes, cheekbones sharp from skipped meals, my hair a tangled mess stuffed under a cap. I kept reaching out, hoping against hope the family would step up. "Mom's struggling post-surgery," I texted the group chat. "Can someone help?" Dad's reply was a Band-Aid. "Hang in there, kid. Busy week." Landon sent flowers, cheap carnations with a card reading, "Get well, Mom." But no visit, no call. Mia promised to stop by, and for a moment, I believed her. She showed up one afternoon, her perfume cutting through the house's stale air, a casserole dish in hand. "Thought you could use this," she said, her smile tight. We sat for 10 minutes, her eyes flicking to her phone as I tried to explain Mom's setbacks. "I gotta run," she said halfway out the door. "Brooke needs me for wedding stuff. I'll come back, I swear." She didn't. The casserole sat uneaten, a mocking reminder of yet another broken promise. Dad finally visited, a 15-minute pit stop on his way to the office. He stood awkwardly by Mom's bed, tie crooked, muttering, "She looks okay, right?" I wanted to scream, "Okay? She's barely here." But I just nodded, too tired to fight. He patted my shoulder, said, "You're doing great, Harper," and left, his car peeling out before I could ask for real help. The silence after he left was deafening, heavier than the hum of Mom's oxygen machine. Jenna, a colleague from the bank, was the only one who checked in without prompting. Her email popped up one night. "Heard about your mom. Anything I can do?" I stared at the screen, tears blurring the words. Someone cared, but it wasn't family. It was a coworker I barely knew. I typed a quick thanks, too drained to say more. But her kindness was a lifeline in the dark. One night, as I tucked Mom in, she grabbed my wrist, her eyes suddenly clear. "Don't carry the world alone, Harper," she said, her voice a ghost of its old strength. I froze, the words echoing her advice from years ago when she'd catch me stressing over exams or Dad's favoritism. "I'm trying, Mom," I whispered. But as she drifted off, I felt the truth settle in. I was alone. Dad, Landon, Mia. They'd checked out, leaving me to hold the pieces of a life that was fracturing faster than I could mend. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a new alert. A tagged photo from the wedding, now just days away. Landon and Brooke, all smiles, cutting a sample cake. The caption, "Ready for the big day." My blood boiled, the isolation cutting deeper than ever. And then the hospital called again, the nurse's voice tight. "Harper, your mom's spiking a fever again. You need to get here." My heart plummeted. What now? The hospital's call about Mom's fever hit like a gut punch, yanking me from the haze of exhaustion that had settled after Dad's half-hearted visit. I was in the kitchen, scrubbing the same spot on the counter for the third time, the sponge worn thin like my nerves, when the phone rang. The nurse's voice was calm but urgent. "Ms. Harper, Evelyn's temperature is climbing again. We need you back here." My knees buckled, and I gripped the edge of the sink, the cold porcelain grounding me as the room spun. Another fever? After all we'd been through? I threw on my coat, keys jingling in my trembling hand, and drove back to the hospital in a fog, the city lights streaking past like accusations. By the time I got there, they'd stabilized her with antibiotics, but the doc pulled me aside in the hallway, his scrubs rumpled. "It's touch and go," he said again, echoing the nightmare from before. I nodded numbly, sinking into a chair by her bed, watching her chest rise and fall under the thin blanket. Hours blurred into dawn, the hospital's hum a constant drone. I dozed in fits, my head against the wall, until my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Jenna, my coworker at the bank, the one who'd reached out with that simple, "Anything I can do?" Her subject line, "Saw this at a work event, thought you should know." I rubbed my eyes, confusion cutting through the fog. Jenna? What could she have seen? I opened it, the screen's glow harsh in the dim room. "Hey Harper," she wrote. "Was at a networking thing at the Drake last night and spotted your family. Overheard some stuff. Sending a video. I'm sorry." Attached was a clip, time-stamped from the night before, right around when I'd been begging them to come. My thumb hovered over play, a knot twisting in my gut. Why would Jenna be at Landon's rehearsal? Then it clicked. She worked in sales, probably rubbing elbows with the same crowd. I hit play, the audio crackling to life through my earbuds. The video was shaky, filmed from a corner table, but clear enough. The grand ballroom at the Drake, chandeliers twinkling like stars, tables laden with crystal and flowers. Landon stood at the center, microphone in hand, his tuck sharp, Brooke beaming beside him. "Thanks to Dad for making this epic," he said, his voice booming with that easy charm. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then he leaned in, smirking. "Even with all the family drama back home, Harper's handling Mom like a champ, right?" More chuckles, glasses clinking. Dad nodded from his seat, raising his champagne. "She's got it under control," he added, his tone light, like we were talking about a leaky faucet. Mia, in her bridesmaid dress, laughed along, chiming in loud enough for the mic to catch. "Classic Harper. Always the drama queen, but she pulls through." I paused the video, my breath catching like I'd been slapped. Drama? Handling it? Mom was fighting for her life, and they were toasting like it was a joke. I replayed it, the anger bubbling slow at first, a simmer in my chest. Landon's smirk, Dad's casual nod, Mia's laugh. They weren't just absent, they were mocking us. The knot twisted tighter, heat rising to my face as I gripped the phone harder. How could they? I'd sacrificed everything, my job, my sleep, my life, and they reduced it to drama? The fury escalated, a wave crashing over me, my mind racing through every ignored text, every broken promise. This wasn't a slip. This was who they were. I scrolled back through our message history, the screen a timeline of neglect. Months of my updates. Mom had a bad night, wandered again, met with Dad's busy at work, or Landon's thumbs up emoji. Birthdays where I got a card and Landon got a watch. Family dinners where Dad praised Landon's latest deal while brushing off my bank promotion. The pattern stared back at me, undeniable. I was the fixer, the invisible one, always second fiddle. Mia's texts were there too, early ones full of "I'm here for you," fading to excuses about wedding prep. The realization hit like a freight train. This wasn't new, it was a lifetime of being sidelined. My hands shook, tears blurring the screen, but beneath the hurt something shifted, a spark of resolve. No more. I wouldn't beg anymore. I'd stand up, for Mom, for me. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. A text from Dad. "Harper, we need to discuss the family finances. Wedding costs are adding up. Can you swing by tomorrow to sign some papers?" Finances? Now? After everything? The audacity fueled the fire, turning shock into steel. I set the phone down, staring at Mom's empty bed in the house, the silence roaring. They thought they could keep treating me like this? Not anymore. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, jolting me from my seat. Through the peephole, I saw them. Dad, Landon, Brooke, Mia, standing on the porch, faces expectant, like they were dropping by for coffee. My pulse thundered. This was it. The doorbell's chime cut through the silence like a knife, yanking me back to the present. I froze, my phone still clutched in my hand from Dad's text about family finances, the words swimming on the screen. Through the peephole, there they were. Dad shifting his weight in his pressed shirt, Landon with Brooke tucked under his arm, Mia hovering at the back, her makeup flawless like she'd come straight from a bridal luncheon. They looked casual, expectant, as if dropping by for Sunday brunch, not crashing into my storm. My pulse hammered in my ears, the video from Jenna burning in my mind. This was it, the confrontation I'd both dreaded and craved. I swung the door open but planted myself in the threshold, arms crossed like a barricade. "What do you want?" My voice came out steadier than I felt, the exhaustion from Mom's fever watch fueling a fire I hadn't known was there. Dad stepped forward first, his face a mask of forced concern. the kind he wore at client meetings. "Harper, we came to check on you and Mom. After the wedding craziness, we figured, check on us?" I cut him off, the words sharp as glass. "Now? After ignoring my calls while Mom fought a fever that could have killed her?" Landon rolled his eyes, Brooke shifting uncomfortably beside him. Mia met my gaze, her expression guilty but silent. Dad held up his hands, placating. "Kiddo, the wedding was important. Landon's only getting married once. We knew you had it handled." Handled? The word ignited the simmer in my chest to a boil. I pulled out my phone, thumbing to the video with shaking fingers. "Handled? Let me show you how you handled it." I hit play, turning the screen toward them, the audio crackling to life. Landon's voice boomed. "Even with all the family drama back home, Harper's handling Mom like a champ, right?" Laughter echoed from the clip, Dad's nod visible, Mia's chuckle cutting deep. They froze, faces paling under the porch light. Landon recovered first, defensive, his jaw set like when he'd argue over chores as kids. "That's out of context, sis. It was just joking around. Lightening the mood at the party." "Context?" I snapped, my voice rising, the escalation pulling me along like a current. "Mom was dying, Landon, and you called it drama?" Mia stepped in, her eyes pleading, hand reaching out. "Harper, please. We didn't mean it like that. I was just going along. You know how these things are." Going along? The betrayal twisted deeper, layers peeling back. Years of her witnessing the favoritism, now joining in. Dad tried to interject, his tone shifting to remorseful, eyes softening. "Harper, we're sorry if it came off wrong. We love your mom. We love you. That's why we're here now, to make things right." For a split second, I wavered, the little girl in me wanting to believe the apology, to grab the olive branch and end the nightmare. But then he reached into his jacket, pulling out a folder. "Actually, while we're talking, we need to go over the family trust. With the wedding expenses, we're adjusting things. Need your signature to keep it fair." "Fair?" I snatched the papers, scanning them under the dim light. There it was, amendments redirecting my share to Landon, couched in legalese about future stability. The reversal hit like whiplash. His fake remorse just a ploy to get me to sign away what little security I had left. "You've got to be kidding," I whispered, then louder, the argument layering on fury. "This is why you're here? Not for Mom, not for me, but to cut me out the day after her fever breaks?" Landon puffed up, defensive again. "Come on, Harper, it's not like that. You've got your job. I need it for the house with Brooke." Mia begged, tears welling. "Please, don't do this. We're family. We can fix it." But her words rang hollow, echoing her laugh in the video. The escalation peaked, my voice rising to a shout that startled even me. "Family? You mocked us at a party while I sat alone in a hospital. You've never been there. Not for the bad days, not for the bills, not for anything." Dad's face hardened, the remorse mask cracking. "Harper, be reasonable. Sign the papers, and we'll help with Mom." "Reasonable?" I hurled the folder at his feet, pages scattering on the porch. "Get out, all of you. You're not my family anymore." They stood stunned, Landon blustering. "You can't mean that!" Mia sobbing. 20 years of friendship, please!" But I slammed the door, the lock clicking with finality, my back against the wood as sobs racked my body. The silence outside matched the storm inside, but for the first time, I felt a spark of freedom amid the pain. Mom stirred from the living room, her voice faint. "Harper? What's wrong?" I wiped my eyes, stepping toward her, but before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Another text from Dad. "We need to resolve this." Resolve? Oh, we would. The echo of the slammed door still rang in my ears as I leaned against it, my sobs quieting to ragged breaths. Mom's faint voice. "Harper? What's wrong?" pulled me from the edge, and I wiped my eyes, forcing myself to move. Dad's text, "We need to resolve this," glowed on my phone, but I swiped it away, my resolve hardening like steel. I'd drawn a line in the sand, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange peace settle over me, like the calm after a storm. The weight of their betrayal was still there, but so was the freedom of letting go. I stepped into the living room where Mom lay in her hospital bed, her eyes half open, searching the dim light. "Just a bad day, Mom," I whispered, tucking her blanket around her. "We're okay now." But as I sat beside her, the quiet of the house wrapped around me. I knew I couldn't keep carrying this alone. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, glinting off Mom's old recipe cards on the fridge. I sipped coffee, the mug warm in my hands, and Googled Caregiver Support Chicago. My fingers hesitated over the call button for a local therapy clinic, doubt creeping in. What's talking gonna fix? But Mom's words from the night before, "Don't carry the world alone," echoed in my head, pushing me to dial. The receptionist's voice was kind, and by noon, I had an appointment with Dr. Ellis, a therapist who specialized in caregiver burnout. I drove to her office, a small brick building in Evanston, my stomach knotted with nerves. What was I even going to say? That my family ditched me? That I was falling apart? Dr. Ellis was a woman in her 60s, her office cluttered with books and a faint smell of lavender from a diffuser. She leaned forward, glasses perched on her nose, and said, "Tell me what brought you here, Harper." The words spilled out. Mom's Alzheimer's, the fall, the family's absence, the video that gutted me. She nodded, her face steady, and shared her own story, caring for her dad with dementia, the guilt, the loneliness. "It's like you're invisible," she said, her voice soft but knowing. "But you're stronger than you think." Her words hit deep, a mirror to Carla's advice, and I felt a spark of something new, not just survival, but strength. I left with a pamphlet for a caregiver support group and a promise to come back. That week, I went to my first meeting at a community center in Oak Park. The room smelled of stale coffee and had folding chairs in a circle, like some kind of recovery cliché. But the people there, nurses, daughters, husbands, all worn thin by caring for loved ones, felt like a lifeline. A guy named Sam, mid-40s with a tired smile, talked about his wife's Parkinson's, how he'd learned to ask for help. "You can't pour from an empty cup," he said, passing me a donut from the snack table. I laughed for the first time in weeks, the sound foreign in my throat. They shared tips, local grants for home care, respite programs, and I jotted down every word, hope flickering like a candle in the wind. With their help, I tapped into community resources. A local nonprofit covered part of Carla's fees, easing the chokehold on my bank account. I found a physical therapist who worked with Mom, teaching her to shuffle with a walker. Her small victories, 3 steps without wobbling, feeling like my own. The house felt less like a prison, the air lighter as I leaned on these strangers who understood. But the family kept trying to claw their way back. Dad called twice, leaving voicemails. "Harper, let's talk. We're worried about you isolating." Landon texted, "Honeymoon's great, but Mom okay?" Mia sent a long message, full of apologies. "I messed up. Can we meet?" For a moment, I pictured sitting down with her, hashing it out over coffee like old times. But then I remembered her laugh in the video, the sting of her betrayal. I didn't reply. The false hope of reconciliation flickered, then died. They'd had their chance. Back at home, I sat with Mom, her hand in mine as she dozed. The living room was quiet, the hum of her oxygen machine steady. I thought about Dr. Ellis's words. "You're stronger than you think." I was starting to believe it, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The fight wasn't over, and neither was I. But then my phone buzzed again. A new voicemail from Dad, his tone urgent. "Harper, it's about your mom's estate. We need you to come by." My stomach twisted. What were they planning now? Dad's voicemail. "It's about your mom's estate. We need you to come by." Sat unanswered in my inbox, a nagging ghost I refused to face. I set the phone down, my fingers brushing Mom's blanket as she slept, her breathing soft under the hum of the oxygen machine. The fight with my family had left scars, but the therapy sessions and support group had planted seeds of something new. Resilience, maybe, or just stubborn hope. I wasn't ready to let Dad drag me back into their mess. Not yet. The weeks that followed were a blur of grief and small wins, a slow climb out of the darkness that had nearly swallowed me. A month later, the grief hit hard, like a wave I didn't see coming. I'd be fine 1 minute, stirring oatmeal for Mom, the kitchen warm with the scent of cinnamon, then suddenly sobbing over a photo of her from my college graduation, her goofy hat tilted just so. But work became my anchor. I'd clawed my way back to full-time at the bank, pitching a new loan program for first-time homebuyers that got me a nod from the branch manager. "Harper, you're killing it," he said, and I felt a spark of the old me, the one who dreamed of climbing the ladder before Alzheimer's derailed everything. The praise didn't erase the ache, but it reminded me I was still here, still fighting. The support group became my lifeline. At a meeting in the community center, I met Ellen and Tom, a couple in their 50s, caring for Tom's dad with dementia. Over coffee and stale donuts, they shared their story. Missed anniversaries, sleepless nights, but also moments of grace, like when Tom's dad remembered a song from his youth. "You find family where you least expect it," Ellen said, her smile crinkling her eyes as she handed me a pamphlet for a caregiver blog network. I started writing that week, pouring my story into a blog. Late nights by Mom's bedside, the betrayal of Landon's wedding, the loneliness that felt like drowning. The words were raw, unpolished, but the comments flooded in. "You're not alone. Keep going." Strangers became a community, their stories stitching me back together. One evening, I ran into Mia at a coffee shop in Oak Park. I was grabbing a latte, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder, when she appeared, her face hesitant under the neon sign. "Harper?" she said, voice soft. "Can we talk?" My gut clenched, memories of her laugh in that video flashing back. Part of me wanted to walk away, but another part, the one that remembered our late-night ice cream runs, nodded. We sat in a corner booth, the air thick with awkwardness. "I screwed up," she said, eyes down. "I got caught up in the wedding. I should have been there." I wanted to believe her, to let the door crack open, but the hurt was too fresh. "I needed you, Mia," I said, my voice steady. "And you chose a party." She flinched, tears welling, but I stood, leaving my coffee half drunk. The door wasn't shut forever, but it wasn't open yet either. Then came the call about Dad. A cousin texted, his heart, a minor attack, landed him in the hospital. My first instinct was to rush over, the dutiful daughter reflex kicking in. But I stopped, staring at Mom's recipe cards on the fridge, her handwriting faded but firm. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I sent a short email with hospital resources. No personal note, no "get well soon." It felt cold, but it was all I could give without breaking again. 2 years later, life looked different. Mom was in a memory care facility, a small place with kind staff and a garden she loved, even if she didn't always know why. I visited daily, reading her old books or playing her favorite Beatles songs, her fingers tapping faintly to the rhythm. I'd moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, my own space, paid for with a promotion to loan manager. The blog had grown, connecting me to a network of caregivers who felt like family, chosen, not forced. But the scars remained. a quiet ache when I saw families laughing at the grocery store. One night, as I left Mom's facility, my phone buzzed. A new message from Landon. "Sis, can we meet? It's important." My thumb hovered over delete, the old wounds stirring. What could he want now? Landon's text. "Sis, can we meet? It's important." Glowed on my phone as I left Mom's memory care facility, the evening air crisp with the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden. I stood under the glow of a street lamp, my thumb hovering over delete, the old wounds from that night on the porch still raw. 2 years had passed since I slammed the door on my family, and I'd built something new, a life carved from grit and chosen connections. But the message stirred a flicker of doubt. What could he want now? I pocketed the phone, unanswered, and drove home, the Chicago skyline glittering like a promise I was still learning to trust. 2 years felt like a lifetime. Sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by books and a few plants I'd managed not to kill, I traced the arc of my journey. The early days after the confrontation were a blur of grief and defiance, but therapy with Dr. Ellis and the caregiver support group had been my lifeline. I'd learned to set boundaries, to say no to the family's half-hearted olive branches without guilt. Mom was stable now, her days at the facility filled with small joys, humming Beatles songs, smiling at the roses outside her window. I visited daily, reading her old novels, her hand warm in mine even if her eyes didn't always know me. Each visit was a reminder of the strength I'd found, not the loud, flashy kind, but the quiet, steady kind that kept me going when the world felt too heavy. The biggest lesson wasn't about Mom's care or even the betrayal. It was about family, not the one you're born into, but the one you choose. Sam and Ellen from the support group had become my anchors, inviting me to their home for potlucks, sharing stories of their own struggles over homemade chili. My blog, now with thousands of readers, connected me to caregivers across the country. Strangers who left comments like, "Your story saved me today." I'd found a tribe, not in blood ties, but in shared battles. The bank had promoted me to loan manager. My office a cozy corner with a photo of Mom and me on the desk, her grin from better days a daily nudge to keep pushing. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was Harper, standing tall in a life I'd built from the ashes. But the past wasn't gone. Dad's heart scare had rattled me, though I'd kept my distance, sending resources without opening the door to reconciliation. Mia had reached out a few times since our coffee shop run-in, her texts full of apologies, but I wasn't ready to let her back in. Landon's message now, though, felt different, urgent, almost desperate. Part of me wondered if it was another ploy, like the trust papers Dad had tried to push. But another part, the one that remembered Mom's advice to trust your gut, felt a spark of curiosity. Not hope, not yet, but something close. I sat by Mom one evening, the facility's common room quiet except for the soft strum of a guitar from a volunteer. I held her hand, her fingers tracing mine like they were searching for something familiar. "You'd be proud, Mom," I whispered, my voice low. "I'm not carrying it alone anymore." Her eyes flicked to me, a fleeting clarity, and she squeezed my hand, just for a second. It was enough. The loss of my old family still ached, but it had led me here, to a community, a purpose, a hope I hadn't seen coming. To anyone out there carrying a load like I did, share your story. You're not alone, and your voice matters. If this moved you, hit like, drop your thoughts below, share this with a friend, and subscribe for the next episode. There's more to come, and you won't want to miss what happens next. As I left the facility, my phone buzzed again. A new email, this time from an unknown sender with a subject line, "About Evelyn's care." My heart skipped. Was this Landon's important meeting, or something else entirely?